What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back from a video where this time I'm doing a part 2 to a video I made about 3 months ago, which is the greatest player of all time at every category. In this video, I'm going to be narrowing the scope and looking at different categories that are more specific than the first video. Now before we get into this video, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to do so, and if you could like this video, I'd greatly appreciate it. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So the first category I have is the greatest peak of all time, and the player who had the greatest peak was Michael Jordan. During a 6-year stretch from 1988 to 1993, Jordan was by far the best player in the NBA, winning 3 MVPs, 1 Defensive Player of the Year, being 6-time All-NBA, 6-time All-Defensive, and leading the NBA in scoring 6 different times. And besides the accolades, the thing about peak Jordan that always impresses me is how great he was in the playoffs, averaging 34.6 points per game, 6.7 boards, 6.6 assists on 50, 35, and 83 splits. And during this time, Jordan won 3 championships and 3 finals MVPs, all those being consecutive. And looking at him as an individual basketball player, this version of Jordan had very few, if any, flaws in his game. And athletically, he was at his peak, having a 45+ inch vertical, being the best dunker in the league, being a great shot blocker, as well as a great on-ball and off-ball defender. And one of the things Jordan always gets criticized for is three-point shooting, but actually during this stretch, Jordan was a decent three-point shooter, shooting upwards of 35%, while being the best mid-range shooter in the league and possibly NBA history. So when looking at peak Jordan, he was great in the playoffs, great in the finals, he won multiple championships, multiple MVPs, and at this time, nobody was on his level. So that's why I say Jordan had the greatest peak in NBA history. Now looking ahead to our next category, we have longevity. And the player with the best longevity is LeBron James. And so far in LeBron's career, he's played 18 years, and in every single one of those years, he's averaged over 20 points per game, and for 17 straight years, he's averaged over 25 points per game. Those are both the longest streaks in NBA history. He also has the most consecutive years, averaging 25, 5, and 5, proving once again LeBron is one of the best all-around players in NBA history. And also from a cumulative stat perspective, LeBron right now has 35,000 points, 9,000 assists, and 9,000 boards. The only player in NBA history to dominate all 3 of those fields that great. And when you look at LeBron's longevity in the playoffs, it's also very impressive. He is first all-time in playoff points, second all-time in assists, 6th in rebounds, and 1st in steals, being the only player in NBA history top 10 in all 4 of those categories. And also looking at the finals, LeBron is 2nd in points, 2nd in assists, 4th in rebounds, and 2nd in steals. The only player top 5 in all those categories in NBA history. And right now LeBron is 36 years old, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. And by the end of his career, he'll have far and away the best longevity in NBA history, as he already does right now. Now looking ahead to our next category, we have dominance. And the most dominant player in NBA history has been Shaquille O'Neal. And Shaq is unlike any player we've ever seen. He's 7'1", 330 pounds, and in his prime was unstoppable. And when talking about Shaq's dominance, the most dominant version of Shaq comes in 2000. As this year, he averaged 29.7 points per game, 13.6 boards, 3.8 assists with 3.0 blocks on 57% shooting. And he almost became the first ever unanimous MVP. And also looking to the playoffs, he averaged 30.7 points per game, 15.4 boards, 3.1 assists with 2.4 blocks on 56% shooting. And it gets even better when you look at the NBA Finals, as Shaq once again upped his play, averaging 38 points per game, 16.7 boards, 2.3 assists, 2.7 blocks on 61% shooting. And in that final series, Shaq had 4 games of 40+ points and didn't score under 30 in a single game. So Shaq at his peak in 2000 was the most dominant player in NBA history, and he was simply unstoppable. Now speaking of unstoppable, our next category is the most unstoppable move in NBA history. And this of course has to be Kareem's skyhook. And why the skyhook was unstoppable, he's 7'1", had an immense wingspan, and he was highly skilled. And he'd use his left arm to shield you off and simply rise above you and drop in the nice skyhook. Now unfortunately, there's not really any stats to how dominant the skyhook was, but there was one Reddit user who went back to the 83 playoffs and mapped out all of Kareem's games and recorded his skyhook and his shooting percentages. And keep in mind, at this time Kareem was 35 years old and really on the back end of his career. but still in this playoff run, he shot exactly 50% on skyhook jumpers. So that is why I say Kareem had the most unstoppable move in NBA history. So looking ahead to our next category, we have the best duo of all time, that being Shaq and Kobe. And at their peak, this duo from 2000 to 2004 was unlike any duo we'd ever seen. They are the best 1-2 punch in NBA history. Kobe dominated from the perimeter, and Shaq dominated in the paint. And of course, these two players had their differences off the court, but on the court, they could not be stopped, winning 3 straight championships. And during those 3 championship years, the Lakers won 67 games, 56, and 58. And if you look at their record in the playoffs, they were once again dominant, specifically the 0-1 playoffs, where they only lost 1 game that entire postseason. And Shaq and Kobe collectively during this stretch averaged over 50 points per game and 50% shooting during their 3 championship years. So that is why I put the Shaq and Kobe duo as the greatest duo in NBA history. Now moving on from the greatest duo, next up we have the greatest trio, and that is Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. And just like Shaq and Kobe, this trio three-peated, winning 3 state championships from 96 to 98. And during those 3 years, they won 72 games, 69 games, and 62 games. And in the playoffs, they were also dominant, going 15-3, 15-4, and 15-6. And really the one aspect of this trio that always stands out is how good they were defensively. During this time, the Bulls were always a top 5 defense, with Jordan and Pippen handling the perimeter, and Dennis Rodman locking down the paint. And during this stretch, Jordan was a 2-time MVP and a 3-time All-Defensive player. Scottie was also a 3-time All-Defensive, and Rodman was a 1-time All-Defensive player. And they were the perfect blend of a trio. They all complement each other, Jordan being the alpha dog scorer, Scottie being the do-it-all small forward, and Rodman being the defensive first power forward. And it is unfortunate that these players only played 3 years together, because just maybe they could have won 4 or even 5 championships if all these guys were in their absolute primes. But regardless, this trio is the greatest big 3 in NBA history. Now next up, we have the biggest what if in NBA history, and this also involves a dominant trio, that being KD, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden, and wondering what if they stayed together and Harden wasn't traded. And I think this what if stands out in NBA history because it has so many moving parts. If Harden stays, they possibly win a championship, which in return keeps KD past 2016, and Westbrook also stays, and maybe this trio dominates the NBA for years to come. Also, we never get the KD Warriors, one of the most hated teams in NBA history, and Kevin Durant largely is not viewed as a villain. Also, one of the downsides of this what if, we never really get to see prime James Harden on his own, most likely in OKC, playing alongside Westbrook, a ball-dominant player. Harden most likely would not develop his playmaking skills. But regardless, if this big 3 stayed together past 2012, I can guarantee you they would have won at least 1 championship and found a way to be one of the best big 3s in NBA history. But unfortunately, James Harden was traded, and we'll never know. That's why I think this is the greatest what if in NBA history, because it has so many moving parts that affected 10 plus years of basketball. So moving on from that category, next up, we have the best finals performer in NBA history, and that player is undoubtedly Michael Jordan. As Jordan in his career made 6 finals appearances, winning all 6 times. In those 6 series, he averaged 33.6 points per game, the highest average ever, 6.0 assists, 6.0 boards on 48, 36, and 80 splits. And besides being undefeated in the finals, which is great, Jordan in the finals never really choked and had an all-time bad series. His worst ever series was 96, where he still averaged 27 points per game, which is his lowest ever in the finals. But looking past that one series, Jordan was dominant every single time in the finals. In 91, he averaged 31 points and 11 assists. 92, 35 points per game on insane shooting splits. In 93, averaged 41 points per game. And both 97 and 98, he averaged over 32 points per game and had some iconic clutch time moments. And speaking of those clutch time moments, Jordan had some of those iconic plays in the finals in NBA history. In 91, he had the famous layup where he switched hands. In 92, he had the shrug game where he had 6 threes. 97, he had the flu game. In 98, he had the game 6 where he had 45 points and the game-winning shot over Brian Russell. So taking all that into account, Jordan is the best finals performer in NBA history. Now the last category we have is the best heat check player of all time, and that is Kobe Bryant. And throughout Kobe's career, from his early days to his prime, and even his later years, if he caught fire one night, he would torch you relentlessly. You can look at his 81-point game, his last game ever we had 60, his 62-point game versus Dallas in 3 quarters. There's numerous games you can look to where Kobe Bryant caught fire and was simply unstoppable. And stats-wise, you can break this down a couple of ways. How I did it was by quarter and by half. If you look at the most 15-point quarters in NBA history, Kobe is responsible for 3 out of the top 6, that being 06 Kobe, 07 Kobe, and 03 Kobe. If you look at the most 20-point quarters, Kobe's also responsible for 3 of the top 6, once again that being 07 Kobe, 06 Kobe, and 03 Kobe. And the last numbers I have is that Kobe is the only player ever to have multiple 40-point halves in a single year, and he's first all-time in 20-point halves with 60, and also 4th all-time with 45. So when Kobe got it rolling and his jumper was falling, you could only hope and pray that he wouldn't score on you. So that right there was part 2 of the greatest player of all time in every category. And these categories were a little bit different, a little more absurd, but I thought a part 2 of this video was necessary. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.